Hello, hello. My name is Denise, and I'm going to do a wrap up for the month of January. The books that I read this month, there were eight in total, and what I did is I wanted all my books to have a winter theme to them, a winter that needed to happen in the wintertime. And I'm going to tell you about these books in no certain order. It's just willy nilly how I pick them up off the bench. So, my first one is Welcome to Fox Crossing. Yeah. And it is by Melinda Metz. When I saw the cover on the snow, I knew it qualified for my reading for last month. I also thought the fox was kind of cute, so I picked it up at Walmart and started reading it. The novel is about a fox who some in the town consider it to be a sign of love. So when you see the fox, you are to be on the lookout because love's about to happen in your life. The characters are true to life with their struggles, challenges, and also their heartaches. They are true to characters. They are true to life characters. Is what I'm trying to say. It definitely uh, it wasn't my favorite read. It wasn't a bad one. It was an easy one. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I just think that it was very I guess you could say superficial. But if you're looking for a warm and cozy read this winter, this is definitely one that you might want to add to your list. The next book that I'm going to talk about is it's titled Blue. It was it's well I can't get it right. It's by Daniel. Oh, it's got a crooked. It's by Danielle Steele, and it's I've never read anything by her. I know my mom used to read her a lot, but even though she's popular author, I've never read anything by her. The main character in this book is called Jenny Carter. She used to be famous in the TV news arena. She was married to a top anchorman, and they were happily married with a 3-year-old son in Beverly Hills. But something happened in her life, and it turned her whole life topsy turvy. The novel is all about her trying to piece her life back together while she's attempting to find meaning in her life. She travels the world as a human rights worker, and she puts herself in some very dangerous situations. Throughout the book, also, I probably need to let everybody know throughout the book, there's serious issues such as abuse of boys within the Catholic Church. That's spoken of in great detail. The author also speaks in some detail about the Middle East and global affairs. Without going into details, there were a few holes within the story, such as registering him into a public school, coming from an administrator. I know it's not quite that easy to get a kid, especially when you don't have any proof that they're not yours or that you've not been given custody of them. It doesn't quite happen that easily. Um, Also, getting involved with the Catholic Church on a negative um, platform, I don't think it's quite as easy as it does the storyline made it sound like or made it seem like. But there weren't so many holes in the storyline that that I did not enjoy reading the book or recommend it. That I would not recommend it to others. The storyline brought out a lot of emotions such as anger, frustration, sadness, happiness, all those kinds of things. If you like to read about real life events that happen to some people, and that one might be one you'd be interested in. The next book that I'm going to talk to you about is historical fiction. It is Before We Were Yours, and it is by Lisa Wingate. The story is based on one of America's most notorious real life scandals, in which Georgia Tan, I think was her name, director of an adoption organization, kidnapped and sold poor children to wealthy families all over the country. This story takes place in Memphis in 1939. 12-year-old Real Foss and her four younger siblings live life with their family on the Mississippi River. But when their father has to rush their mother to the hospital one stormy night, Real is left in charge. Well, that's the night some strangers arrive and the children are placed in a orphanage. They're told that they'll soon be returned to their parents, but they quickly realize that that's not going to be the case. Um, and then another part of the story is in Aiken, South Carolina, Avery Stafford. She's born into wealth and privilege. She seems to have it all. She's a successful career. She has a successful career. She is a federal prosecutor, and she has a handsome fiance that they have a wedding that's scheduled to happen soon. When Avery returns home to help her father, though, deal with a health issue, she's confronted with some uncomfortable questions and details about her family's history. If you like to read historical fiction, this is definitely one that merits your attention. I certainly, I hate to know that this actually did happen to kids, but I enjoyed reading about it, finding out some more of history. Knowing that some of this stuff happened to some of these kids was just mind boggling. Um, there are times in history when I wish I could change history. There are times when I wish I could change history, and this was definitely one of those. But since I can't change history, I'm hoping to learn. You hope to learn from it, and so also the story and what made me hesitate a while ago was the story happens in the present, and then also what happened in the past. It's every other chapter. It's present and then past. What the kids, how the kids were handled at that time, and then the present, which is Avery Stafford and how she goes back and figures out what happened and how it all relates and correlates together towards the end of the novel. It was a good read. I enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend that to anyone. The next book I have is Five Total Strangers. It's by Natalie Richards. This book is a novel about a teenager named Myra who accepts a ride from a group of college kids. She just met them. She doesn't have a clue about anything about them. She knows all she knows is there's a storm about to happen, a snowstorm, and she wants to get her tail home as quick as possible. So because of that, she pitches in on a rental for a car with this group of kids. Yes, they get caught in the snowstorm like they wouldn't, and drives as they're driving home. Uh, it's full of events that were not predicted by any of them except for one in the car. It was such a far-fetched idea that I had a hard time believing the events that as they occurred. I'm sure things like these events could happen or have happened to in some point in time, but I found myself thinking, really, I don't know about that. So it was an okay novel and definitely an easy read, but not my cup of tea. The next book that I want to talk to you about is The Tattooist in Auschwitz, or From Auschwitz. It is by Heather Morris. Um, this book is a historical fiction. It takes place between the year of 1942 and 1945. It details the life of two people. Well, actually, one, the guy, and how he deals with certain situations while he's in the Auschwitz concentration camp. The fact that he can speak several languages works in his favor when getting a job, and he is the tattooist for the campsite for the camp. Well, it's not a campground. I can't even. Oh, excuse me, my mind drew a blank. But he tattoos numbers on everybody that comes in Auschwitz, which now lets them be known by a number and not a name. So they're gradually losing their person or personality, not personality. They're gradually losing their geez, I can't even think of the name. Anyway, his position as a tattooist allows him more freedom than the average prisoner, meaning he gets to walk around the camp, he gets more food, which he does share with other prisoners, and he's allowed to speak to the other guards and the other office personnel, which in turn allows him to help other prisoners escape or get medicine when they're sick. He falls in love with Jita, I guess is how you say her name. And these pages, we find out how their love withstands the awful things they go through at the hands of the German soldiers. And we also discover the kind of person he is by how he risks his life in order to help others. Definitely a good read. Not a hard read at all. Really easy. Didn't take long to get through it. Again, learning from history. Hate that this happened, but hopefully anyone who reads or has knows about it learns from it. The next one that I have to share with you is The Shack. The Shack is yeah, right here. Ooh. I'm getting all confused with this backward stuff. The Shack is by William Paul Young. In the novel The Shack, the main character Mac shares the story of meeting God, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Mac has had a rough childhood. His father was an alcoholic and he was abusive, so he left home at 13 years of age. Mac's wife is very religious, where he's not. They have 5 children. One summer, Mac and his kids go on a camping trip. On their last morning at the campsite, his youngest daughter goes missing, disappears. Mac's family moves on with their lives, but Mac does not. One day he receives a letter that invites him to go to a shack. When he arrives at the shack, he falls asleep on the floor and wakes up in the springtime. The shack now has changed into a cabin by a lake with 3 people. The people are referred to as Papa, Sarayu, and Jesus Christ. Because of some things that happened throughout his time at the shack, he is able to help the police with his daughter's disappearance. This book was a tearjerker from the get go. When it comes to forgiveness and letting things go, it was definitely one that I needed to read. It dealt with all 3 aspects of the Trinity, but I had a small problem with how they represented the Trinity. 2 parts of the Trinity. Um, one was called the God, who was called Papa, was a woman. The Son, who was described as a Mideastern male, and the Holy Spirit, who was called Sarayu, an Asian woman. I had an issue with God and the Holy Spirit being represented by women. I've always thought of the Trinity being men. That's my issue, I'm sure. But that was the only issue that I had with this book, though. As far as the rest of it, I would definitely classify it as a really good book that I enjoyed reading and one that I was able to learn a little bit about my own personal growth. I would definitely recommend this book. The next book that I have is called The Other Woman by, I can't get this thing straight, by Sandy Jones. This book was recommended to me as a novel with a very interesting storyline, and it does have that. But I found myself not completely satisfied with the justification as to why some of these characters acted the way they did or did what they did. I read this novel during January because, again, it happened during the winter months. Um, the deception that was found within the novel left me a little angry and upset at almost all the characters. This was another novel that left me with a lot of questions as to the plot for the entire story. It was definitely a plot with a lot of twists and turns, and some of them you have no idea about to happen. But some of them made no sense to me. I was actually a little frustrated as to the ending of the novel. I'm sure I wish the author would have shared the reasoning behind some of the things they made, the decisions they made, because it made no sense to me. If you like to read about life events that happen to some people but leave you wondering how life can turn upside down within minutes, this is the book. I think I would have liked it better if there had been a little bit more explanation as to why the characters' actions were what they were. It was okay. It was not my favorite read, but I wouldn't tell anybody that not to read it because I might have missed something that you might not miss as far as for the justification as to why they acted like they did. But I would recommend people to read the book. It's just not one that I liked too much. The next one that I have was an ebook, and I'm hoping to get a picture that I can show you later on. But it was called Out of the Silence by Eduardo Strauch. Eduardo was a passenger on the infamous plane that crashed on the Andes, and in 1972, for 72 days, the people who survived the initial crash lived on snow and a few supplies they could salvage from the plane and cannibalism. I didn't know much about this event. I mean, after all, I was like 10 years old reading this book, but reading this book taught me a lot, taught me a little bit more about history, and also made me more aware of what, as humans, sometimes you have to do when you're confronted with life or death. I've always told my kids, don't say what you're not going to do because those words may not taste so good if you have to eat them. As for the events within this book, it begins with the plane crash in South America in the 70s. Eduardo retells the facts as well as his spiritual reflection on these events. When I remember things, I read from this story, I certainly understand how he included a spiritual aspect of the book. It was a big chunk of it. Sometimes he kind of went on and on about it. But to be quite honest with you, I'm not sure how you survive something of this magnitude without having some sort of spiritual awareness from within. One has to appreciate that a harrowing experience like this would either strengthen your faith or break it, one or the other. Eduardo seems to have made his peace with the mountain, and he's grateful. He goes up and visits the scene of the accident often. He's grateful for how it shaped his life. When a person can use something like this kind of event, and handle life in such a positive manner as he's done, in my book, it's an incredible human being. I do recommend this book for readers who enjoy reading about spiritual matters that can cause you to see life in a different way, or maybe reading about events that cause us as humans to become a better person. I don't regret reading this book at all. It was kind of at times when the accident happened and he gives you details about stuff, but then other times when he talks about the spiritual aspect, you kind of have to see that you either get close or you don't, or you decide there isn't a God, one or the other. Again, I like this book. I would recommend reading it. With that said, that's all for now. That's all I read. That's all for now. Sounds like something TV. That's all. That's all I read in the month of January. I'm hoping to read more than 8 books in February, but we'll see how that goes. Bye for now.